This is video 1 for Math 141 Finals Review. Given 2 points, we're going to create a linear function. I'm going to start off with thinking about which point is point number 1 and point number 2. And I'm going to label my point x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2, y sub 2. The first thing you want to do when you create a linear function is to find the slope. So I'm going to take the change in y, and that is over the change in x. For this particular 2 points, my y sub 2 is the number 2, and my y sub 1 is 3. My x sub 2 is 3, and my y sub 2 is a negative 2. When we go through this process, 2 minus 3 is minus 1. 3 minus a negative 2 is the same as 3 plus 2. So we end up with a 5 in the denominator. So negative 1/5 is my slope. Once I have the slope, I choose one of my points as my x and y that I'm going to replace in the equation. Y equals mx plus b. I now have a y value I'm going to use, an x value, and the slope. My y value is 2. My slope is negative 1/5. My x value is a positive 3. And now I can solve for b. Negative 1/3 times 3 is a negative 3/5. To solve for b, I have to add 3/5 to both sides, but 3/5 doesn't add to 2 very nicely, so I have to change that so it has the same denominator. 2 is the same as 10/5. When I add 3/5 to both sides, that isolates my b, and I'm left with 13/5 as my b. My final equation, we're going to call this a function, so we're going to use f of x for this function. F of x is therefore equal to my slope, which is my negative 1/5 x plus my slope 13/5. Now if you're asked to graph this, you can take the points negative 2, 3, negative 2, 3, there's 1 point. The other point is positive 3, 2, positive 3, 2. And with a straight edge, you would connect these 2 points. So that would be the equation, finding a linear equation using 2 points. If you are then asked to find the inverse function, the inverse function would be f to the negative 1 of x. You would want to switch your x and y values. So instead of our equation here, f of x would be our y. And if we want to find the inverse, we would make our y value x, and our x value would be y. So this function would end up being x equals negative 1/5 y plus 13 over 15. Now I want to isolate my y to get this inverse function. So I'm going to subtract 13/5 from the x. Sorry, that should have been a 5 instead of a 15. I'm going to take that away there. Okay. So I'm subtracting 13/5 from both sides. That equals a negative 1/5 y. And then I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 5 And so that would get rid of the negative 1/5. That would make it a positive y over here. Negative 5x, and this would be, these 5's would cancel, the negative would cancel, and I'd have plus 13. So this would be our inverse function, negative 5x plus 13. That would be the inverse of this function here. To find the equation, to find it on the graph, we would plot the points in the opposite order. Our x's become our y's, and our y's become our x's. So instead of a negative 2 as our x, the 3 is our x, and the negative 2 becomes our y. Here the 2 becomes our x, and the 3 becomes our y. So when we plot these points, we have positive 3, negative 2, and we have positive 2, positive 3. We would connect these with a straight line, and this would be your inverse function. So this would be f to the negative 1 of x, while whereas this is our f of x. The domains and ranges are positive and negative infinity. That doesn't change. They're both straight lines. They go to infinity in both directions. But these are the steps for finding an equation given 2 points, and then going through the process of finding the inverse function.